Hello, my name is Dana Angell, and I'm the Visual Studies Collection Specialist here at the Library of Virginia. Today I wish to speak to you about identifying and caring for photographs in personal collections and hopefully answer any questions you may have. Through this talk, I will walk you through the most common types of photographs found in personal collections and provide a brief history of photographic processes, how to identify prints, and then give tips for how to store them for preservation and access. At the end, I will provide resources for further information on these subjects. What we will cover: identifying photograph formats commonly found in personal collections, preservation issues of photographs, best practices for handling and storage, and basic tools and supplies. All photographs consist of this basic structure: a support layer, a binder layer, and an image layer. The base or support is often paper, but can also be made of film or glass in the case of negatives, or metal like with daguerreotypes and tintypes. The binder or emulsion layer is often gelatin, but can also consist of albumin or wet collodion or other materials. The image layer is the light-sensitive material that is suspended in the binder layer and through exposure, development, and processing forms the final image. This goes to show that photographs are simple structures but can be composed of very different materials. The formation of photographic images, either negative or positive, begins when a light-sensitive emulsion, usually on paper, glass, or film, is exposed to light under controlled circumstances. When we think about photographs, the image of a darkroom comes to mind. The trays of liquid are part of the development process where the image is washed, toned, and fixed. Fixing the image means making it stable by desensitizing the emulsion. Because there are a variety of photographic formats you may find in your personal collections, there are differing rates of deterioration and they have varying preservation needs. Photography was introduced in the 19th century. This timeline shows the earliest and most popular formats, many of which we will discuss. If you would like to take a deeper dive into the history of photography, the George Eastman Museum YouTube channel has a series of videos about the various photographic processes. This chart shows the dates when various photographic processes were in use from the 1830s through 1950s. Knowing when the format was popular is helpful in dating the photographs and will aid you in knowing what the image might be made of. Over the next several slides, we will dive into a few of the more popular photographic processes that might show up in personal collections. First, we'll discuss 19th century historic processes. The first widespread photographic process that appears in collections is the daguerreotype. This process was first introduced in France in 1839 by Louis Daguerre, and it consists of an image made on a silver-coated copper plate. It is a direct positive process made without a negative. It has a highly reflective surface that sometimes makes it difficult to see the image. These photographs are in cases, as shown here. Similar in look and size to daguerreotypes, the ambrotype is essentially an underexposed collodion glass negative with dark material placed behind it. This causes the negative to appear as a positive image. Compared to the daguerreotype, it is a duller, less contrasty image. Unlike the daguerreotype, the image does not have a mirror-like surface. The ambrotype was less expensive to make than a daguerreotype and were sometimes colored in by hand. To answer what may be a question on everyone's mind, what is collodion? It is a syrupy solution of nitrocellulose in a mixture of alcohol and ether used for coating things, chiefly used in surgery and in former photographic processes. Tintypes are another type of collodion negative process, but this time the collodion was placed directly on a blackened metal plate. Tintypes were often loose and were cheap to produce. This was also a format mainly popular in the United States. Because they were so cheap, they weren't seen as precious and would often be sent to family and friends through the mail. Albumin prints were the most common type of photographic print made during the 19th century. They are characterized by a smooth, shiny surface, which is the result of a coating of egg whites, or albumin. The color can vary a great deal depending upon the treatment given during processing, but most often it is a purplish brown. These appeared in the form of carte de visite or cabinet cards. So how do we tell these different formats apart? There are many online charts and websites with information, one of the most useful being the Graphics Atlas, but a simple way to tell these formats apart is to answer the following questions. Is the image shiny like a mirror? Do you only see the image from an angle? Does the back of the plate look like copper? Then you have a daguerreotype. Is the image on a glass plate? Does the image have depth or look three-dimensional? Then you have an ambrotype. Is the image on a blackened iron plate? Will a magnet attach to the plate? Then you know you have a tintype. Is the image on a thin card approximately 2 3/8 by 4 inches? Then you know it's a carte de visite. Is the image mounted on a card 4 1/4 by 6 1/2 inches? Then it's a cabinet card. I want to take a moment to talk about stereographs. This is a format and not a photographic process, but it is likely one you may find in personal collections. Many different photographic processes were used to produce stereographs, including all of the previously mentioned formats. Stereographs were formed of two images placed side by side and viewed through a stereoscope to produce a three-dimensional image. Think of the Viewmaster. It's the same premise. Moving from the late 19th into the 20th century, gelatin silver is a general term describing the most common process for making black and white photographs since the 1890s. Gelatin was used on glass-based negatives, paper negatives, and film negatives. Almost all consumer-based photographic prints from the 20th century are some form of gelatin silver print. This was a dry process that enabled the photographer to buy film or paper already sensitized and ready to use. The ease of gelatin emulsion became a revolutionary development in photography and gave rise to amateur photography. These prints will likely be the majority of prints found in personal collections. Gelatin silver prints can also be known by the types of paper they were developed on, which are called developing out and printing out papers. Developing out prints look like cool-toned black and white images, while printing out prints usually have warm tones. To uncover which type of paper a gelatin silver print is printed on, it must be examined under a photographic loupe or magnifying glass. Color photography was invented in the 1860s, but the first widespread color photographic process was introduced in 1935 by Eastman Kodak. The Kodachrome process consisted of 3 emulsions, each sensitive to a primary color coated on a single film base. It was the primary form of color photography through the 1970s. The color dye was added during the development process. Many Kodachrome images came in the form of slides. Because the developing process was so involved, the film had to be developed by a professional processing plant and could not be done by the photographer. This process fell out of favor when color film was invented. The chromogenic process was the dominant color photographic process of the 20th century for prints, negatives, and transparencies. The final image is composed of 3 superimposed gelatin layers containing either yellow, magenta, or cyan dye, resulting in a full color image. Instant color prints are products of the dye diffusion transfer process, which incorporated all the materials needed to create and develop the film within the film itself. It was introduced by Polaroid, and the process is synonymous with the name. Now that we're familiar with the most common photographic formats that may appear in personal collections, let's discuss how to properly store and care for them. A really helpful online tool is the Preservation Self-Assessment created by the University of Illinois. This tool provides help with identification of formats and also recommendations for storage. I mentioned the Graphics Atlas before. This is also a helpful tool to identify various formats of photographs. You can also compare examples of different formats to tell the difference between how the image appears on the paper. For example, if you wish to determine what type of paper a gelatin silver image is printed on. Because of the materials used to create photographs, they are prone to deterioration. Some common methods of deterioration you may see, and as illustrated on this chart, are staining, yellowing, fading, silver mirroring, metal and glass corrosion or cracks, color shifts, and foxing of paper supports. In order to prevent or slow down these methods of deterioration, it's important to house and store photographic collections properly. For storage, enclose all materials in archival boxes, folders, or sleeves. Limit light exposure or filter UV light. In an archival setting, I would say to store boxes and folders on metal shelving or flat files. You will not have that at home, nor should you. Store your photographs in a cool, dry place with low light and away from fluctuating temperatures. This means preferably not in an attic, basement, or garage. Provide stable environmental conditions as much as you can. Cool is best, but stable is most important. Fluctuating temperature and humidity will speed up the deterioration of photographs. The very basic formula is low temperature and humidity and low light. When handling photographs, use nitrile or cotton gloves. Nitrile is best as cotton can leave behind fibers. However, cotton is better than nothing. Hold prints and negatives with 2 hands and keep fingers off the emulsion surface. Use support boards for fragile materials. Avoid rolling, flexing, or bending prints and negatives. When housing photographs, should you use paper or plastic? Use both depending on the format. For film negatives and oversized prints, use paper folders and sleeves. You want to look for things that say they are acid-free and lignin-free. The same goes for archival boxes. You want something that has passed the photographic activity test, and there will be a label that says PAT test. You also want buffered sleeves. This means it will take into account the pH of the item and not exacerbate fading. Interleaving papers should be smooth. A note about film negatives. Most found in your collections will be made of cellulose acetate, and they will usually say safety film on them. They will also have a specific notch code. The other type of film negative is cellulose nitrate, which is extremely flammable. This film also has a specific notch code for identification. Nitrate negatives should be stored away from all other collections, preferably in cold storage. If deterioration begins, the fire marshal or hazardous waste people must be notified. When you are housing your prints, use plastic sleeves. Choose polyester, polyethylene, or polypropylene. Never use PVC plastic. L-shaped or open at one end make it easy for your photographs to slide in and not come out. Just say no to magnetic albums. We probably all have albums like this at home. The initial thought was the magnetic pages would keep the photos in place and allow you to arrange your pictures however you like. However, the pages are made from PVC plastic. The adhesive is bad for the photographs and eventually wears away over time, leaving you with loose photos. If your photos are falling out of albums like this, it's an opportunity to rehouse them in archival albums and sleeves. If your photos are still stuck in albums like this, please don't attempt to try to pry them out, as that can cause more damage. What about case photographs or glass plate negatives? House in 3 or 4 flap enclosures, acid-free and lignin-free of course. Store vertically in well-fit boxes and use foam spacers when boxes aren't full. To label enclosures, use pencil or printed labels. Place label in consistent location on the enclosure. Remove materials from housing before labeling so you don't leave any indentations or marks on the items. To label photographs, make sure all labels should be reversible. Be sure to only use pencil, either a number 2 or a Stabilo pencil. Use vinyl erasers, not rubber erasers. Label in a consistent location on the photograph. You can also add printed labels to sleeves if you're using sleeves. Let's move on to arrangement and description of photographic collections to achieve the goal of intellectual and physical control. Intellectual control is how you organize a collection and divide it into different categories. Physical control is how and where items are housed and arranged. This may be a little more than you will do with your personal collections, but this is how I would process a photographic collection at work. You can take tips and tricks to aid in your personal collection organization. Arrangement can be by original order or imposed order. If you are arranging by imposed order, you may want to consider arranging by creator, whether the photographer, printer, or publisher, by subject like Grand Canyon, schools, etc., or by format, negative, slides, or prints. The goal is to get a sense of the totality of the collection before arrangement. Considerations for arrangement. What is the importance of these materials? Why were they collected? Are they part of a larger collection? What arrangement will best enable access? If a collection is highlighting a specific geographic area, then it should be arranged based on that. However, if you have a collection by a certain photographer, then it should be arranged as part of their work. Think critically about how best you will access this material. Once physical arrangement is complete, the next step is to provide description. Now, I know you won't be cataloging your photographs like we do at the library, but if you are able to provide any context to your images, that will aid your family members down the line. Knowing the process of how each photograph is made will aid in how we describe the photograph because it will be intrinsically tied to a specific time period and method of creation. This is why being able to distinguish between different photographic formats is important. It can provide context clues that will aid in your description and help determine the approximate date of its creation. However, there are so many tools online to help with photo identification, so don't let this overwhelm you. The basic elements of description are title, creator, date, scope and content, system of arrangement, subject, work types, geographic locations. Let's take a deeper dive into the levels of description. On this slide, I have two examples, one of item level description and one of group level description. I'm going to highlight the basic parts of this description. Title is a word or a phrase by which the material being described is known or can be identified. This can be given as a descriptive title or can be given by the creator. Date. This will most often be the date of creation or approximate date of the creation. It can be given by the creator or determined based on the photographic format or visual cues in the image. Creator. Identify the person or institution associated with the creation of the item. Scope and content is the information about the nature of the materials and the activities reflected. This gives background information to enable users to judge relevance. System of arrangement describes the current organization of the collection. This is where you would note if items are in original or imposed order. Subject documenting the subjects by the visual information present. You can use Library of Congress subject headings and/or the thesaurus for graphic materials. Work types documents the processes, materials, and techniques used in the creation of the image. This can include the format of photographs. And location, documenting geographic locations depicted in the image. Now let's discuss digitization. I will briefly touch on digitization or scanning as a means of preservation. Digitizing your family photographs is a great way to maintain copies should something like a fire or flood destroy your originals. Some things to consider when scanning photographs. Make sure the original fits completely on the surface of the scanner. The lid of the scanner can crush and crease the original if the paper does not fit. Please do not use the automatic feeder to scan photographs as it will cause them to bend, crack, and curl. When file naming, use only the letters of the Latin alphabet when creating alphanumeric identifications. Don't use spaces, punctuation, or symbols. Use hyphens and underscores instead of spaces. Add basic metadata to files. Who, what, where, and when. Metadata helps find and identify files later in time. This is similar to using description. Back up your files following the 3-2-1 rule. 3 copies stored on 2 different media and 1 copy located off-site. Don't get rid of your originals. Digitization isn't a replacement for preservation. It is only a means of preservation. Only get rid of your originals if there is a significant risk of fire, as with nitrate negatives or with off-gassing, i.e. vinegar syndrome. If you don't have enough computer storage space or don't want to confine your photos to a single computer or USB drive, you can also upload your photos to the cloud or a number of different photo storage websites. That way, if anything happens to your personal computer, laptop, or USB drive, you can quickly restore and recover all of your photos you took the time to digitize. A few popular digital photo storage options include Apple iCloud, Amazon Photos, Dropbox, Google Photos/Google Drive, and Shutterfly. Scanning also allows you to restore images that have been previously damaged. You can fix cracks or discoloration and create clean copies for other family members. While today's presentation offered a very brief overview about photographs and family collections, the hope is that you are able to take away some tangible steps to help you care for the photographs in your collection. The following websites can provide further information about photography, caring for photographic collections, and issues related to conservation and preservation. Thank you for watching.